to be good at enticing a woman, do you consider it manipulation?
This is something I've thought about for a long time. So like in my early to mid 20s, I think I was pretty manipulative in terms of like how I approach people. But I think I grew out of that. This is something that I hate saying this. This is the worst thing in the world to say that, like, be yourself thing. But almost every interaction that I'll have with a woman or a man, it stems from some genuine interest. Like if I'm asking you questions about something, it's not because I'm thinking like, I know that if I can get you to talk about yourself for like an hour, that we'll be fucking later tonight. Like I'm not thinking that. Usually it's chicks I'm genuinely like, I'm kind of interested in, like, it's hard for me to hang around people that I don't like for an extended period of time. Like you're getting like 30 to 60 minutes max out of me, and then I'll be like, okay, I'll see you later, and then we're like done forever. So if I'm asking somebody questions, it's because like there is a genuine interest there. I am remembering things that are being said so I can make jokes or callbacks or references later. Like I am keeping track of like what's going on because I'm genuinely interested in the person. And if you can communicate interest to somebody, like that feels good. Like, is that manipulation? I mean, I don't know. To me, manipulation implies like some level of being disingenuous, and I'm not generally disingenuous. So yeah.
I've long lamented that we need another word because my wife and I, we talk a lot about this. So we've been married for over 20 years, in fact, almost 21 in a month. And one of the things that we've said is that and again, influence may be the closer thing, but we've influenced each other a lot. And the one promise that we made to each other very early on in the relationship is, look, back then we would have said manipulate. I'm going to manipulate you, but the only trick that I'm going to play on you is that I will always tell you exactly what I'm doing.
Sure.
And the reason that I'm telling you is I don't ever want you to feel like I'm, doing something behind your back or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But at the same time, I want you to know exactly what I'm trying to get out of this. And so there's no way that I would have become as successful as an entrepreneur if I hadn't had my wife. Because at the beginning of our marriage, it was very traditional. She was a stay-at-home wife and I went out and worked. And so she was sort of maneuvering through the world through me. And so it was like, if she didn't think I was being tough enough or asking for enough or pushing hard enough or whatever, she, in the way that only a woman can, would reward and punish, based on wanting me to be tougher or more aggressive. And so that ended up being an amazing tool in my arsenal. And so likewise, if there were things that she was doing that I didn't like, it was reward and punish, and let's put punish in air quotes, but making sure that she really understood what I liked and what I didn't like. And by doing that, we've really shaped each other. And all of those tools are the thing that I had to learn to finally start getting laid. And so like you, I never felt like I was being manipulative, but I knew what I was doing. And my journey went something like this. I was the cliche that people tried to warn you about. So I would show up on the first date with poetry, custom written for you. Oh yes. And flowers. And unironically, P.S., and really was very confused.
Wait, unironically, P.S., what's that?
Just meaning I was showing up with flowers and poetry. For my generation, that was like, that even back then, that was probably pretty cringe.
Yeah.
But it felt right. It felt like a thing to acknowledge that I was very excited to be out with you, that I thought a lot about you.
On my my third date with my like first kind of like real girlfriend in high school, I brought her flowers, and then she dumped me, and I found out she was a lesbian. Wow. So I remember I had my cringe moments.
Surprise ending.
Yeah.
So I finally, after years of this, went to this guy and was like, what's the secret? Because he was very successful with women. What's the secret? He's like, oh, Tom, you just have to treat him like an asshole. And I was like, dude, come on. Like, that's the most cliche shit ever. And I've seen him with women and he's not. And so I was like, what is he actually trying to say? And I realized just by looking at his behavior and saying, okay, he's calling it being an asshole, but what is it really? Because he was very charming. And I realized, oh, what he is he's willing to walk away.
Yes. Holy shit. Something that I had to deal with for so much of my life, and people will say this about me constantly. People always say that, like, Destiny, the way that you interact with women is super red pill. Like, you neg them all the time. You're constantly mean. You're such an asshole, blah, 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 blah. I'm very, very, very rarely mean to somebody, though. And I try to communicate this to my fan base a lot, that, like, if you ever see me interacting with somebody and I'm, like, negging somebody, it's always over stuff that is like fair game to be playful about, right? There's never been a girl that I've liked and we're like joking around and I'm like, yeah, that's true. You're kind of fat though. Like never do that, right? Never. If I'm like making fun of things, it's stuff that we know is like kind of, we're joking around. And for a lot of women, or it seems to be the case that for a lot of women, it's really hard to find a person that like is respectful of you, but will also give you a lot of shit, but we'll do it in kind of like a funny, playful way. Because it seems like you've either got, you can do like a liberal, conservative dichotomy. You've either got the guy on the left who's like just the ultra simp, and he's like texting you like, please tell me good night tonight, like you haven't texted me back, right, blah, blah, blah.
Yo.
Or you've got the guy who's like too far to the right, who's like kind of like funny and charming and shit, but he actually treats you like shit and doesn't respect you at all. And something I noticed this really early on, I think in my early college days, that if I was talking to a girl, and I notice a lot of guys do this, you talk to a girl like, oh, what's your favorite band? Third Eye Blind? Oh, mine too. What's your favorite movie? Oh, Interstellar? Oh, mine too. Right? You say these things. That if I was talking to a girl and she said some shit, I'm like, oh, what's your favorite band? And she's like, I really like Linkin Park. And I'm like, oof, what a horrible, horrible group of musicians. As soon as I say like, their eyes will light up, and then we're like fighting over it. And that type of interaction, I could tell for the girl, was the first time that like a guy had ever said like, I think that I don't like that whatever thing. But I'm not like being here like your taste in music is shit, and you're just right. It's just like a fun thing to fight about. But that what you talk about, a lot of people will see kind of the ways that interact with people, and they're like, oh my god, like you're such an asshole. Like, I'm not. I'm an incredibly respectful person, and I'm pretty sure any girl I've ever interacted with will say as much. Like, I'm never pushy for sex. I'm never like doing any like weird like running game or being manipulative or being an asshole. Like, I'm just like playfully like messing around with things that are fair game to mess around with. I bring this up too because sometimes I've gotten clips of like fans doing things like in games or whatever where they're interacting with people, and then I see people try to copy some of the things, but they are just being mean.
Right.
And it's really hard to communicate with people because sometimes my fans do things like, oh, like why did you get mad when this person said this about you, but you say this thing all the time? And it's like, it's not the same. I don't know how to communicate that. Like when I'm doing that, I'm just like playing around and everybody knows it. Yeah.
Playfulness is a big part of the game. Playfulness usually comes when you have the confidence, and also that you can see, if you understand what emotion you're trying to create, and you can actually create that emotion. And if you can create that emotion in a way that keeps them a little off balance, in a way where they don't feel unsafe, it still needs to be playful. I'll give you an example. So the first sort of sexually charged words I ever said to the woman who is now my wife was, sit your ass down, you're not going anywhere.
Sure.
Now, the number of people that have heard me tell that story that then tell my wife, oh my God, like he's abusing you, like you've got to get away. And she, of course, finds that hilarious. But given the context, given where we were in our relationship, she found it playful. And I won't say funny because she was excited, because she was interested. So that was certainly a part of it. But when you can create a sense of like playfulness, where almost like comedy, where you say the thing that you're not supposed to say, but you do it in a way that like lets the person laugh or be in on it. That's good.
Really quick on that. There's a really good clip that a lot of people didn't understand. To joke about a thing, you have to have a full understanding of the thing, and that makes a joke work. There's a show on, I think it was a Jubilee dating show or something, and I think the girl asked this group of guys in front of her, she was like, if we had a fight, like, how would you manage that in our relationship if we had a disagreement? And one of the guys that answered, a guy who was wearing like a hoodie or whatever, and he was like, his answer was like, I think the first thing I would do I would try to gaslight you into thinking it was your fault. I would create an unhealthy sense of dependence where you constantly felt like you were chasing my approval, and I would give it to you in little bits so that you became desperate for my attention, and I would have you like it was like a psychopathic answer. And in the end, she ended up choosing that guy as the guy that she liked most. And everybody's like, oh my God, look, he was a total asshole and it worked. And it's like, no, it's because the joke like showed you that he was aware of all of these like toxic things, but he could joke about it. But like, there's like a lot of like truth you can communicate with humor and stuff sometimes too. But yeah, it plays into that idea of like being playful, and sometimes even being able to say something. Fuck, I hate this. I actually hate this conversation because like so much of this is like a learned intuitive thing. Like I don't think I could write a guide to it, but there's a way that you can like shock somebody without actually like being crazy, right? Like, but it's hard to it's hard to tell you where exactly you draw the line. And there are probably times where I've overstepped. There are times where I've made jokes. I just had an abortion debate with like 2 women last night, and I'm pretty sure before the show, I could tell by the reaction that I was probably pushing a little bit too far. But like sometimes, like depending on the person, depending on the context, depending on the scenario, like you could push really far with certain types of humor, and it'll be like you said, it kind of keeps them off balance where they're like, it's kind of funny, but you can't do it too much, because sometimes you can go straight to the like, that was way too creepy, way too far, and I'm completely out of here. But
but so it's interesting that you say this. So playing with that, you are going to miss sometimes.
Absolutely.
But finding that edge is a lot of fun, and you will sometimes miss. But if you can create like unexpected moments to get a reaction, like there was a time, this is after I was married, so trust me, my wife knows all about this story, but I was being a wingman for a guy. And so there was a girl that he really liked, and that girl brought a friend, and we were actually on a business trip. And we're at this diner, and I was like definitely flirting with the girl. And I said, I'm going to ask you to do something that's surprisingly intimate. Are you willing to do it? She's like, well, no, you got to tell me what it is before. It's like, no. I need you to say yes before I tell you what it is.
Okay.
Will you do it? And she's like, okay. I said, cool. I'm going to take my sweatshirt off, and I'm worried that my shirt is going to pull up. Do you just hold my shirt down? And so she held my shirt down while I took my sweatshirt off. And she was like, you're right. That was surprisingly intimate. And so it became this funny thing where the punchline was like really mundane, but by creating that like unease of like, I'm going to ask you to do something, it's going to be weird, and then delivering something that's ultimately safe, it really is like being good. It's a similar thing to being good at comedy. Like you have to know where you can push. You have to know what's going to keep people off balance, give them a sense of like sort of uneasy anticipation, and then you release it.
Yeah. And this is like deliberate with lots of practice, because again, it's hard to write out. Because the reason why these conversations suck sometimes is because I know there's somebody listening at home that's like very awkward, very kind of quasi autistic or whatever, and it's like like there are times where,
but it is the truth.
It is, yeah. There are times when you talk about like people talk about like enthusiastic affirmative consent, like in order to, you have to have a girl, saying like yes and getting blah 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 blah. And it's like sometimes I'll go this route if I'm like very unsure, but like generally I think I can generally feel it out. But then sometimes people will ask like, well, hold on, well, I'm not sure, blah blah blah, and it's like, okay, well, if you're asking, you probably should just get like the verbal, like yes or no. Like if you can't tell, like because there are even times where like even for something like that, like I can mess up sometimes, or like I'm misreading stuff, especially with like new partners and everything. A lot of it is like you have to practice it a lot. I will say one thing in regards to the Me Too thing. This is something that I try to be very conscious of a lot, and it's something that I think would help a lot. Is when you're dealing with women. This is so weird because as a guy, you'd never, ever, ever feel this around a woman. It's weird. It's hard to empathize, but it's even hard to empathize because being around a bigger man won't give you the same feeling, because bigger men don't touch you either. It's weird when you're in a position where you're going to be engaging in an activity where there's a guy that could kill you at any moment if he wanted to, or make you feel like a goat, or make you feel really uncomfortable, and that's like part of your recreational get-together with that person. This is like what sex is for women. So that arrangement is intrinsically, there's a lot going on there. A guy is thinking like, I just want to fuck this girl and that's it. And the girl is like, I don't know how far I want to go. If I say no, is this guy going to feel this way? Like, is it like, it's like, if I blah, blah, blah. There's like a million things that they're like thinking about or trying to manage. When I'm trying to give people advice for like what to hit on people or how to pick up people, I don't that often because fuck it. Because you either know or you don't, I don't know. But like if you were going to do something this is like a deliberate conscious thing I try to keep in mind, is always try to do your best to make the woman feel like she has a way out. And if you want to call it manipulation, more often than not, that'll actually get you laid than anything else. So like, it might be a really subtle thing. Like I'm driving, let's say that I go out on a date with a girl and we get back to my car. At this point, what I really want to do is just turn my ignition on and drive to my apartment, right? Because if I can get to my apartment, I'm probably gonna fuck, right? But rather than do that, the tempting thing can be to ask a question like, hey, do you want to go to my place? And you ask a girl that, And it's really hard, like, if you give a woman, if you tell her, like, let's go do this, and the only way out is confrontation, a lot of times she won't do the confrontation because she just doesn't want to deal. Because women are usually conditioned to acquiesce and to be submissive and agreeable. So she'll just kind of like keep going along until you've gotten her into a way more uncomfortable situation than you even realize. But sometimes asking somebody a question like, hey, do you want to come over to my apartment, or do you have like something going on in the morning? If you like offer like a little out like that, if the woman feels like she has to be like, okay, if I want to leave, I can say yes. As long as somebody always feels like they have the ability to step out, people tend to be way more comfortable because it alleviates a ton of pressure from the situation. So, sorry, that's like just a really roundabout way to say, like, anytime you're engaging with a woman, and there have been times where like, oh, I could tell like a woman's uncomfortable, whatever, like, be willing to just like back off and like take a break and be chill. Because I think like the best thing for a woman in any type of new, especially sexual or any romantic situation, you always want her to feel like if she says no, or like even if she doesn't say no, if she just feels uncomfortable, that you can like put the brakes on and just like chill for a bit. And I think if more people had that kind of mentality, I think one, you would end up having more sex. Like, this sounds manipulative. I don't mean to make it sound good, but I don't think there's ever been a time where I've sensed a girl was like that. I was like, hey, let's just like take a break for a moment. Every single one of those situations that eventually resulted in us fucking, because usually it's like, okay, I feel chill or whatever. So one, it helps guys, I guess, get laid. But then two, it helps you avoid those like Me Too things, because it's very, very, very easy to get a girl in a really compromised situation that she wouldn't be in if she could have made the choice right from the start. But you've kind of like cleverly navigated her there the entire way without even realizing you're doing it, you know? That was a lot of,
interesting. Yeah. My mom gave me a really good piece of advice when I was a kid that was so unintuitive but served me very well, which she said, for a woman to have an orgasm, she has to trust you. And I remember being like, what does trust have to do with an orgasm? Like, that was so foreign to me. But that was the first time where I was like, whoa, then this is a very different experience for a woman than it is for a man. And because I got that advice before I started having sex, I brought that into the table where I was like, okay, like, this is a totally different game, a totally different experience, and may PS have led into the me showing up with flowers and poetry, and you know, maybe I went a little too soft, but that was a real key insight to your point about giving them an exit ramp, making sure they feel safe all the time. That,
because that's ultimately, that's what the trust means. The trust means like, if I'm uncomfortable, are you going to stop? Because it's fully, once the girl's in your apartment, like, whether she lives or dies, like, her entire destiny, her fate is now in your hands as the guy. And for a lot of guys, like, you don't even realize what that experience is like, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. So,
and then also I'll do this because I'm also bi too. Something that's like really funny that I've noticed in terms of hooking up with guys and girls, and I've hooked up with way more girls than guys. And all the girls I've hooked up with, I think there's been one that I can remember that like really pushed my boundary in a way where I'm like, we're stopping, like, we're not going to do this.
If you like that clip, check out another powerful clip right here, and I'll see you there.